In this lecture, I want to show you how you can create alerts. Alerts are basically rules that you define and configure in YAML files. If you use Linux or Ubuntu, if you remember when we installed Prometheus on Ubuntu, we create a directory called rules. And you have to put your YAML file, the rule for the alerts YAML file, in that folder. Because we created a user called Prometheus, and that user, the Prometheus user, already has access to that folder or directory. So you have to put your YAML files in the rules directory. In Windows, it doesn't matter. In Mac as well, it doesn't matter. Find where your prometheus.yaml file is. So if I go to Finder in Mac, when you use Homebrew to install Prometheus, your prometheus.yaml file is in /usr and then local and then etc. So your prometheus.yaml file, that is the configuration file of Prometheus, is in this folder. So in Windows and also in Mac, you can just create a folder called, for example, alerts or rules, it doesn't matter, in here, and then put your YAML files in it. So you have to always give the addresses of the files relative to the config file, Prometheus config file, rule, like this. Now we need to add a YAML file in this folder. For that, you can use any text editor. For example, I can use Visual Studio Code that I have. I will save this in this folder and you can give it any name. For example, you can say this is alerts.yml. Creating an alert is very easy because you are creating a rule. So you have to always start it with the key groups and then 2 spaces, because in YAML files we always use spaces, dash, and then name, and then give it a name. For example, alerts. And then you need to define rules just under name. Make sure that it's under name. And then because this is like an array, we put a dash and then we say alert. So this is basically the type of the rule we are creating, and we can give it a name. For example, in this example, I want to see if Node Exporter is up and running. So we can say is Node Exporter up. And then you need to add an expression after that, and it has to be exactly underneath the alert. And it's XPR. Make sure you don't put XP because it's a very common mistake and it can make you very frustrated. It's XPR, and then you can put an expression, which is normally a PromQL expression. There are some extra keywords and rules you can use for alerts as well. For example, to make sure a target, which is basically a kind of exporter, is up and running and Prometheus is able to scrape it, there is a keyword called up, and then you can find the target using any of its attributes. Normally we use job. So where did I get this job? I get the job from these targets. So if you see, we have 2 targets in Prometheus and they have an attribute called job. So I want to make sure that this node exporter can return metrics. So I say job has to be equal to node exporter. So I want to raise an alert when there is no exporter whose job attribute is equal to node exporter. So we have to make sure this is equal to 0. So when we say equal to 0, it means that this query returns 0 results. And then we can save this. Now we need to edit the Prometheus YAML file. So I can open that Prometheus YAML file. It was in etc. This one. So in here, as you see, we have different sections. One of them was scrape configs. That is where we define the targets. At the same level, exactly at the same level, underneath scrape configs, you need to add rule files, which is rule underline files. Enter and then 2 spaces, put a dash, because you may have multiple rule files. You are basically defining an array, and in a YAML format, you always put dash for each item in an array. And then you can provide the relative path. So our relative path is basically rule and then not rules, a rule and then the name, which was alerts.yml. By doing that, when next time we start Prometheus server, it's going to load this alert file. Now, how do we load this? So you need to restart your service. In Windows, you just press Ctrl+C, you kill the process of Prometheus, you run it again. In Linux, you use system control, and in Homebrew, you can just say brew services restart Prometheus, and it restarts the service. Whatever operating system you use, just restart the service or restart the binary file of Prometheus. Now we go back to Prometheus. Because we started the service, make sure that they are all up. Okay, they are all up and green. So when you go to alerts, there are 3 options. They are not tabs, they are options. They have a tick next to them. When you tick any of those, they are included in the list that you are seeing. What we see in here is now is node exporter up. That's basically the name of this alert. And it's green, which means that this condition is not met. That means that this expression is returning something. It's not equal to 0. When that condition is met, then you get a firing alert, a red one. So let's make that condition meet. So we installed node exporter using brew. So in my Mac, I can say brew services stop node exporter. If you have installed it in Windows, just kill the process by using Ctrl+C key. If you have installed it on Ubuntu, for example, just use system control and then stop node exporter and then stop this. Now, if I go in here and refresh the page, we see that now this turned to red. Firing has 1 in here. As you see, that means there is 1 alert firing. And if you click on it, you get more information. You get the expression and it's in the state of firing. And since when this has been firing, since this time, which is in UTC. If you want to see more, you can click on the expression and then in here you can evaluate the expression yourself. And then you can even add more to that query. And you can also, if it returns anything, you can see it on the graph. Basically, this is just the explorer of Prometheus. Now let's go to terminal, and this time instead of stop, we say start. And then we will see that the alert will go away. Okay. When you start the service, it may take a bit of time for the alert to change because it just gets evaluated like every minute. We can check, and in the target we see that our node exporter is running, but then in alerts it may take a bit of time. The default evaluation time is 1 minute, so you may need a minute for this to change. Okay, as you see now it's green. That means that node exporter is back up. Now I want to show you something. There is a page on the internet where people create nice and cool alerts and they put it here. And you can go and use them as you wish. There is also a table of content in here that says what you can have. So as you see, there are so many alerts defined and they are for example, Windows Server, Docker containers, for all sorts of databases, including MySQL, SQL Server, Kafka, Elasticsearch, RabbitMQ, also for different types of web servers, for example, Nginx and Apache, for Kubernetes. And then you don't need to create rules from the scratch. If you want to create some alerts in your company for your Prometheus, what you can do is that to always check this page first. There are tens and tens of alerts in this page, and then you can just pick the one that is the one that you actually need and use it. You just have to tweak it probably for yourself because like the address of the server sometimes has to be changed and that kind of things. But normally whatever that someone may need is found in here, and always check this. I have linked this page to this topic. You can have a look and always have it under your belt because as I said, sometimes you need to create a rule for an alert. You can just come here, click on copy it to clipboard and use it straight away.